Imagine a president who once stood at the pinnacle of power, ruling over an entire nation. After leaving office, he chose not to retire to a quiet life of leisure. Instead, he returned to the noisy, acerbic, intrigue-filled House of Representatives as an ordinary congressman, arguing day after day with men decades younger than himself. This man was John Quincy Adams. Tonight, by the soft glow of a flickering fire, let us wander into his true life through this story that needs no effort to remember. His life was one of profound contradiction. Born into America's most distinguished family, he never knew true happiness. Filled with patriotic zeal, he was widely seen as mediocre during his presidency. Yet, in the final 20 years of his life, that sober loneliness became his sharpest weapon, turning him into the conscience of his age. What we will see is not a great man from an encyclopedia, but an old soul struggling with depression and reborn from failure. On this peaceful night, walk with me to hear the voice that fell on the floor of the House, the final confession of fate. On February 21, 1848, the U.S. House of Representatives in Washington buzzed with its usual commotion until suddenly all sound froze. The octogenarian John Quincy Adams rose to speak. His old rivals braced for his sharp wit, only to watch the old man tremble slightly. He collapsed on the floor of the House, the very place he had fought for 17 long years. If we turn back the clock half a century, this ending seems almost incomprehensible. In his youth, Adams was regarded as America's most promising young man. His father, John Adams, was a founding father. From childhood, he traveled Europe's royal courts with his father, mastering many languages and witnessing the most complex international upheavals. Yet, this elite education brought him not confidence, but a heavy, almost pathological sense of duty. He wrote in his diary, "I feel as if I walk in darkness, surrounded by piercing thorns." He always felt he was not good enough, that he failed his family name. This early inner repression became the foundation of lifelong melancholy. His stern, austere nature made it hard for others to grow close. In social settings, he seemed cold, rigid, like unyielding granite. Adams' presidency was the darkest shadow of his life. The 1824 election later became known as a corrupt bargain. Though Adams finally entered the White House, he carried a heavy moral burden. In office, he proposed grand visions: a national university, observatories, scientific research centers. He wanted his nation not only strong, but civilized. Yet, in an era that celebrated violence, expansion, and pragmatism, Adams seemed like a ghost from antiquity. His political rival Andrew Jackson was a raging hurricane, shattering Adams' idealism to pieces. Adams spent his 4 White House years in solitude. He rose before dawn each morning to swim alone in the Potomac, trying to wash away his weariness in its cold waters. He wrote despairingly in his diary, "My life has been little more than a lonely struggle." When he lost re-election and left the White House, the world assumed the Adams heir would return to his Massachusetts farm in bitterness, just as his father had. But at this moment, Adams' fate took a miraculous turn. He refused to exit the stage. For him, losing power became a liberation of the soul, a freedom born of clarity. In 1830, when Adams decided to run for the House of Representatives, all his friends thought he had lost his mind. It was seen as a humiliating step down, but Adams replied coldly, "There is nothing undignified in serving the people, even as a constable." From that moment, the cold, aloof president vanished. In his place stood Old Man Eloquent. He found his true battlefield in the House, fighting against slavery. Back then, Southern pro-slavery congressmen passed a shameful gag rule, banning all discussion of anti-slavery petitions in Congress. Adams felt an anger unlike any he had known. It ignited a long-suppressed fire within him. He began a relentless, almost self-punishing resistance. Each day, he entered the chamber carrying thick stacks of petitions. Though the speaker roared for him to sit, Though other congressmen threatened his life, Adams stood firm. With his learning, his logic, even his biting humor, he tore away the pretense of the gag rule. In these battles, he felt a joy he had never known, though tinged still with sorrow. This quiet resolve to fight against all odds transformed him from a failed politician into an immortal fighter. Adams' later years were a marathon of willpower. His body was frail, his hands shook from strokes, his voice grew hoarse, yet he never missed an important debate. By lamplight late at night, he studied legal texts. In the silent dawn, he read classics. His inner world expanded, even as his physical life narrowed. His most famous triumph came in the Amistad case, when enslaved Africans rebelled on a slave ship and were brought to an American court. Adams stepped forward as their defense attorney. He spoke for over 8 hours before the Supreme Court, arguing from natural law to human conscience. It was the brightest moment of his life. He was no longer just an Adams, but a true guardian of human rights. Yet even then, in his private diaries, he filled pages with self-doubt and longing for death. This strange coexistence of depression and struggle created a powerful, tragic tension. He knew the world would not change with his words alone, but he believed that to suffer clearly and fight bravely was humanity's only dignity. Each late night, he sat at his desk conversing with his soul. That loneliness glowed softly in the moonlight. Let us return to that cold February day in 1848. When Adams collapsed in the house, his last words were, "This is the last. I am content." For a man tormented by depression his entire life, dying on the battlefield must have been true happiness. His life answered the deepest question of our story. What lies at the end of failure? For him, it was not oblivion, but a clarity that pierced the ages, a tragic, unyielding perseverance. What he left the world was not a perfect term in office, but a tall, lonely figure that refused to bow. Now, close your eyes. Picture that lone figure swimming in the cold Potomac. Imagine him in the dim House of Representatives, stubbornly holding up his petitions before hundreds of opponents. The world can be noisy, and it can be cold. But some souls choose to stay awake in the dark. Tonight, that clarity is no longer a heavy burden, but a gentle light guiding you to sleep. All struggles have quieted. All loneliness has found a harbor. Good night, on this night that needs no effort to remember. May your dreams hold wind, moon, and unshakable peace.